Alright, today we got a video about forgiveness, which is a little thing I've struggled with quite a bit, and that's actually why I'm making this video, because I've learned a lot that would have helped me before. And as always, I've got these notes that I'm going through in the description, and I'll try to make it pretty quick. It's a pretty simple video. It's just the common belief, or at least for me, was that I should feel something as evidence of forgiveness. And I've had a situation, specifically one situation, where it's been years and I just like, why can't I forgive this person? Why can't I forgive this person? I don't feel, I feel these things, I feel these emotions, and only to come to the knowledge and wisdom eventually that I had actually forgiven them like almost the entire time. I just didn't feel the forgiveness that I was looking for. And what I mean by that is forgiveness is actually an act. And biblically, it's defined as an act. It's actually even almost an accounting term, which is funny because it means biblically is to release a debt. And that debt is like your claim or your whether true or not, your perceived right to retribution or retaliation. They do something to you, you want to do it back. And that's essentially an account. It's an unbalanced account where they did something and you want to make it even. And that's how we all feel. We see it all the time. People want to get even. They want to do it back to them. They want to do them how they do me. And the Greek word for it, APHÍΗMI, I don't know. But what forgiveness means in this Greek word is to release, to let go, to cancel a debt, to send away. And spiritually, how that correlates into that is letting go of the right to retaliate, releasing someone from the debt that they owe you, and choosing not to hold sin against the person. Sin, account, whatever it might be. You are consciously choosing not to hold it against them. You're choosing to not take actions that would, in your mind, be the correct way to respond to the situation. For instance, somebody does something to you, you want to do it back. Let's think of an example. Violence, obviously, like fights or a slap on the cheek, for instance. They do that to you, you want to do it back, make it equal or worse. But forgiveness calls us to not retaliate. And what do you do instead of? I didn't have any good examples for this, but you understand what I'm saying. Somebody does something, emotional hurt, physical hurt, spiritual pain. Somebody does something to you that you want to forgive. God says to forgive. You want to do it. You just don't think that you have the ability. When in actuality, you do have the ability. Just by making a choice of an action, that is the forgiveness. It's not the emotion that you feel. Because if we go back to the spiritual formula, the thought formula, what we do is we have our spirit, which leads to thoughts, which leads to emotions and actions. So what we do by choosing to forgive someone in an act or a choice is the spirit leads to the thought, and the thought leads to the action. And the action is that you're not doing anything about it. You're not taking the revenge or the retribution. You're giving up to God. So you're choosing to say, God, I think they deserve this, and that, but I'm not going to do anything because I know that you've called me to forgive, and I'm going to consciously decide to forgive this person. And forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors, just like in the Lord's Prayer. That is true forgiveness. And it may even take time for your emotions to get with the program. Your spirit wants to forgive, your thought wants to forgive, your actions choose to forgive. But then we got these little things right here, these annoying little emotions that they don't want to get with the program, but they're outnumbered 3-1. They lose. Even though you don't feel the right way, you can be confident that your spirit, thoughts, and actions are doing the appropriate things, and eventually the emotions will come into alignment with the rest of it. Doesn't mean we won't mess up or make mistakes. God knows we'll definitely make mistakes. At least if you're me. I always make mistakes. I screw up every day. So that may relieve a little pressure from you, knowing that if you just choose not to take action on these emotions, you are essentially forgiving. You know, if you're angry, you're hateful, you're whatever it might be, but you decide to not take the equivalent action of that emotion, let's just say hateful or angry, but you feel these things, but they're not real. Like they don't matter in the sense that they're not the evidence of things that are there. They're just a temporary, fleeting emotion. But if you see those things and you choose to take no action directly coming from these emotions, instead you choose to trust your spirit and the spirit that creates the thoughts from God that says, forgive, give up your cares, give up your burdens to God, and vengeance is the Lord's. And if you choose to do that, well, these just eventually fizzle out. And yeah, they may come and they may go, they may return, they may leave constantly, but you just have to make the continual choice to not act on those. And however that might be for you, I'm not too sure. I know a lot of times in my situation, you know, they would really want to boil over to a point of like, something's got to be done, something's got to be done. And even expressing the frustration to other people, they would tell me like, you know, how are you not doing this or that? How are you able to sit there and do nothing? And in my mind, I had not forgiven them because I was emotionally charged and feeling everything. But in terms of the evidence from the outside looking in, you could say that there's evidence of forgiveness and the fact that I didn't take the actions I wanted to take. I was constantly telling God, please help me forgive, take this from me. And it took me a long time, years, to come to the realization that the evidence of forgiveness is in our actions and choices, not in the emotions that we feel towards that person. So yeah, the fact that I did nothing of my own action in retaliation means that I was forgiving them despite the emotions I felt. And here's an example. A lot of people, they confuse forgiveness with forgetting. It's not the same. It's not the same. Definitely different things here. It's got the same root word, but not the same. Okay, so for example, let's say somebody comes to you, they want to borrow money, I don't know, $100. And let's say you give it to them, and already the Bible tells us when you lend, do not expect return. And that's actually forgiveness. When you lend money to someone and you do not expect it to be returned, you've forgiven the balance and the debts, and you've actually settled the account without receiving. And maybe they pay it back, maybe they don't. But if they don't, you forgive. You don't expect anything else from them. You've chosen to forgive their accounts. But that doesn't mean that if they come to you again, you just give them another loan. You don't just naively keep doing that until you're homeless and they move on to another target. That would be forgetting. You don't forget what people have done to you, but you do forgive because you don't want to have... well, I'm about to get into some accounting terminology. Nothing complex. But when you store up unforgiveness, the balance sheet of your soul actually becomes unsettled. So in accounting, just real briefly, there's a balance sheet. You've got things you have and things you owe, and it always has to be equal. But spiritually, you know, if we've got, let's say, forgiveness here and unforgiveness here, my writing is terrible. Just terrible. Hopefully you can forgive the terrible writing. Well, when we store up unforgiveness, you know, we've just got all these things. It's like it becomes a very overwhelming, one-sided. It just never goes away. Unforgiveness hurts you more than somebody else. Like you have the balance in your own heart that you can't let go of, and that just eats into you. Like you constantly think about it. It just creates an overwhelming anxiety, overwhelming debts, just an overwhelming state of being. But when you forgive, the forgiveness is for your own good. It's not for somebody else's good. It's not to show off. It's not to be impressive. The forgiveness is to relieve your own spirit and soul of the balance, to take away this immense amount of liability that you are putting on yourself. It makes it more free, more, well, there goes the brain fart. And essentially it takes away all the weights of all those things in your own spirits. It's for your own good. It's not for their good. God deals with things as he will. But forgiveness is to keep your own heart and soul free from those burdens that come. And you can give it to God. Even if you're praying to God, like, God, please punish this person. Please do this, do that. That's understandable. Like, he understands that. You're still forgiving because you are choosing not to take that account into your own hands. You're making a conscious choice to give this to God. And he may or may not do something. Who knows? He may, whatever. Even if you're on the sideline and you're like hoping to see something bad happen to this person, it's human. We get it. But you're not choosing to make a choice or an act that leads to something happening to that person. So you can feel safe in yourself that even though you have these charged and heavy emotions, you've chosen to release that and not take action. And ultimately, that's true forgiveness. And finally, I'm going to end it with this, because this is a cool thing I learned about when Jesus said when he was on the cross and he died, right before he gave up his spirit, he said, "It is finished." But in Greek, the word tetelestai actually has a far deeper meaning. Not just, it's finished, I'm over, time to leave, peace out. No, what he's saying is God has forgiven our sin debts, all of humanity's sin debt, all of his right to justice. Sin is a direct offense against God, and God has given us the forgiveness to wipe out all of the balance of humanity's sin and give you the ability to trust in Jesus, and he accounts for all of our sin, and you are saved in that manner. When you enter into God's presence, you have no balance of sin in your soul, and therefore you can exist in God's presence. Any person that has a balance of sin, they cannot exist in God's presence, because sin is a direct opposition to God, and it can't exist in his presence. So Jesus comes and he covers us and he forgives that debts, and we're able to exist in the presence of God without any balance of sin in our soul and spirits. So when Jesus says tetelestai, what he's saying is paid in full, accomplished, like it's account closed, meaning all those that believe in me, their account is completely closed forever, past, present, and future. Paid in full is an accounting term, which means the debt is completely, permanently paid. There's no, in the past, but any sin you do in the future is, not forgiven, but, you got to ask for forgiveness every time. No, what he's saying is when you're saved, all sin ever existing in your life, past, present, future, is forgiven, and you can walk in that. God gives us a grace to not be condemned in the sins that we commit because they're not held against us. We have the grace to make mistakes, to learn from them, to keep moving forward, and not to wallow in sin and shame and guilt, because shame and guilt is what actually is the thing that keeps people held back. Satan tempts you into an action, a sin, and when you commit that, he hits you with the shame and guilt. And actually, it's the shame and guilt that's the problem, not the sin. You're forgiven. You can keep moving. You learn from your mistakes. You don't sin willfully, but you learn from your mistakes. But when you wallow in shame and guilt, it takes you out of God's plan. It freezes you. It's actually the bigger sin is the shame and guilt, because God's thoughts are not condemnation towards you. So when you have thoughts of condemnation towards yourself, you're actually disagreeing with God. So we'll wrap that up. That is forgiveness. Just don't beat yourself up if you make the choice but you don't feel the emotion like I did. For years I just beat myself. I'm like, I don't know how to forgive. I would just go on YouTube, like deep dives of like, how do I forgive? How do I forgive? Because I'm not feeling the good fuzzies towards this person. And eventually it led me to a few videos that unlocked the true definition of forgiveness and the actual picture, and that actually freed me up. Like, it freed me up so much, and God gave me the wisdom to understand that you've been forgiving this person the entire time. Like, this entire last 3 years, you have forgiven this person by not choosing to take actions into your own hands, even though you don't feel it. But you've chosen the actions. So yeah.